state of California has a law that says if you're convicted of a crime, you can declare your gender and you can go to a women's prison if you are biologically a male but declare yourself transgender. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Does the state of California require any confirmation of one's gender identity?
There is some type of review process, but it is based on the individual's self-declared gender identity. These individuals don't have to be identifying as transgender or non-binary prior to being convicted and entering prison. It is based on their self-declared gender identity. And I will note that many female inmates we have talked to tell us once they gain access to women's prisons, behind closed doors, they are no longer identifying as transgender. They are embracing their natural male identity.
Ms.
Bowler.
Good afternoon, Chairman Booker, Senator Kennedy, and members of the committee. My name is Kelsey Bowler, and I'm the director of IW Features, the storytelling platform at Independent Women's Forum. Every day, we work to amplify real stories to show how public policy affects Americans, aiming to positively influence policy and promote more civil, compassionate, and productive debates. Some of the most devastating stories we've collected at IW Features are those of women who've been harassed, assaulted, or raped in prison as a direct result of policies that allow male inmates to transfer into women's prisons. While every story of sexual abuse is tragic and deserving of attention, what's different about these stories is that every single one of them could have been easily prevented by keeping biological men out of women's prisons. In hope we can urgently address this inhumane punishment of women, today I will share with you 3 stories that we've collected as part of our ongoing documentary series, Cruel and Unusual Punishment, the Male Takeover of Female Prisons. Each of these inmates from Central California Women's Prison, or CCWF, was impacted by SB 132, a California law passed in 2020 that allows males to be housed in female-only prisons by simply declaring a non-male gender. The first is Alyssa Kamholtz. When Alyssa was a little girl, her mother gave her to her stepfather, a member of the notorious Hells Angels motorcycle gang, as a wedding present. For over a decade, Alyssa was subjected to continuous sexual abuse from the gang members. After spending over 20 years in CCWF, her safe place after years of such horrific abuse, the state placed a male inmate with similar physical characteristics as her abusers in Alyssa's room. To make matters worse, Alyssa found out that her new male bunkmate was even affiliated with the same gang of men who abused her as a young girl. Alyssa told us, quote, "I feel like even being sentenced to prison was easier than having to deal with that. Our sentence wasn't to be abused." Kathleen Quinn lost her parole after objecting to SB 132 and reporting that a male repeatedly peeped on her while she used the bathroom naked from the waist down. Kathleen had served nearly 20 years and was only 3 weeks away from her parole date. By that point, her family had already made arrangements for her to come home. But because she reported this man's repeated behaviors and told the prison she did not feel safe living with men, Kathleen now must wait another 5 years in prison. For some female inmates, speaking out means sacrificing an earlier release date and spending more time behind bars. Finally, the third woman, who I will call Jane Doe, shared a bunk bed with Tremaine Carroll, a 6-foot, 2-inch, 200-pound male. 3 days after moving into his cell, Jane was raped by Carroll in the shower. After the assault, Jane told us she has panic attacks daily, takes medication to quell her violent nightmares, and can only shower once every 3 days due to the trauma. While she ultimately changed her mind about going public using her name, she told us she wanted to be the last female inmate raped as a result of policies like SB 132. Sadly, that wasn't the case. Within 24 hours of raping Jane Doe, Tremaine Carroll was credibly accused of raping another victim. The aim of the Prison Rape Elimination Act was to create zero tolerance for prison rape. By allowing men to self-identify as women and transfer into women's prisons, we are not just tolerating rape, but enabling it. Similar to the situation we were in prior to the passing of PRERA, The need for more data on the effects of policies that allow male inmates into women's prisons is obvious. But we shouldn't wait for data to dictate what these stories already make clear. Policies that grant inmates placement based on their self-declared gender identity have already caused demonstrable harm. Nationwide, an estimated 86% of women in jail are sexual violence survivors. As Senator Cory Booker has aptly described it, there's a survivor of sexual trauma to prisoner pipeline. Putting these women directly back into the nexus of their crimes not only puts them in physical danger, it robs them of the opportunity to rehabilitate and heal. Before closing, I would like to thank this committee for its recent decision to oppose judicial nominee Sarah Netburn. Opposing Netburn's nomination was a meaningful step towards protecting our forgotten female inmates, but so much more must be done. Until all female inmates are protected, Independent Women's Forum will continue amplifying their stories so that all Americans understand the inhumanity of locking up female victims of abuse with convicted male rapists, pedophiles, and murderers. This is not a left or a right issue. It is a human issue. Incarcerated women need and deserve female-only spaces. Anything less is a violation of their dignity and their most basic human rights. Thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing me to be a voice for so many women who, for so long, were unable to speak for themselves.
Thank you, Ms. Bowler, for your testimony.
Ms. Bowler, let me ask you a couple questions. I want to be sure I understand your testimony. The state of California has a law that says if you're convicted of a crime, you can declare your gender and you can go to a women's prison if you are biologically a male but declare yourself transgender. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Does the state of California require any confirmation of one's gender identity?
There is some type of review process, but it is based on the individual's self-declared gender identity. These individuals don't have to be identifying as transgender or non-binary prior to being convicted and entering prison. It is based on their self-declared gender identity. And I will note that many female inmates we have talked to tell us once they gain access to women's prisons behind closed doors, they are no longer identifying as transgender. They are embracing their natural male identity.
Is this primarily an issue in California, or does your organization get reports from other states?
It is certainly the most pervasive in California, since California was on the forefront, one of the first states in the country to pass this state law. But the BOP also generally recommends housing inmates based on their gender identity. There is, again, a review process there.
Wait, you say the BOPs, that's the federal prison
Bureau
system?
of Prison. Under the Biden-Harris administration, they ordered federal prisons to recognize trans-identified inmates' health and safety when making housing decisions, and even declared for the first time that gender-affirming surgery may be medically appropriate, which means taxpayers would be funding it.
These rapes that you talked about, do we have any idea how many have occurred nationwide?
I think that is one of the problems, and that was one of the problems, my understanding, going into PRERA, that there was a lack of reporting. I can tell you in California, state numbers are that 2,186 trans-identified inmates exist in the state. As of now, I'm aware of 351 of them requesting to go to female
prison. Could you give me those numbers once more? I apologize.
2,186 trans-identified inmates currently exist, according to the latest numbers reported by California. Of those, only 351 of them are actually trying to go into female prisons. And I'd also note, in 2022, 1/3 of trans-identifying inmates seeking access to the female prisons were registered sex offenders.
Okay, so there are 2,200 transgender women in women's prisons in California?
Those are just all trans-identified individuals, so they could be biological men or biological women, from my understanding.
Okay.